are panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
Donna Deegan, Jacksonville's first female mayor, will be sworn in tomorrow. Jackson's mourned the loss of community activist Ben Frazier, and questions surrounding DCPS's search for a new superintendent are coming up. Good morning and live with you from WJCT Studios. I'm Dan Scanlon, and this is a special First Coast Connect. And so we've got a lot of things to talk about right now. First of all, we have our guests, our media roundtable here, and to round up the week's news, David Barline will be joining us from the Florida Times-Union. We've got outgoing City Councilwoman Randy DeFore.
Good morning.
We've got A.G. Gankarski from Florida Politics in Jacksonville today, a busy guy right now.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, and we have our perennial favorite writer, Shelton Hull. So listen live on the radio or watch our video stream right now on Facebook and YouTube. Tweet us at FCC On Air, the show's new handle. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or message us on the First Coast Connect Facebook page. So let's begin with our top story. Mayor-elect Donna Deegan will be sworn in tomorrow with inaugural events that are kicking off today. In fact, the breakfast is right now, and there is a ticket-only party tonight. So let's see. Randy DeFore, with 12 hours left to go, 14 hours left to go as a councilwoman, what are your thoughts? I mean, I don't remember in all the years I've been a journalist here that we had this amount of events running up to a new mayor getting sworn in.
Well, I think it's her way of trying to be very inclusive. That's what she ran on, inclusivity, and she's trying to reach out and meet people, as many people as she can coming into office.
Okay, and don't forget to give us a call at 549-2937. That's 549-2937, and we welcome David Barline to the gang here, too. Another busy guy, I'm sure, with what's happening today and tomorrow. Well, you know, we've got First Coast News will be carrying the event live starting at 11 a.m. tomorrow and streaming live on FCN Plus on Roku and Fire TV. But right now is the inaugural prayer breakfast. That's over at the Garden Club. Tonight is the inaugural kickoff celebration. It's ticketed only. You've got to buy a ticket, and that's at 5:30. But then tomorrow, her swearing-in ceremony open to the public at the Jacoby Symphony Hall at the Jacksonville Center for Performing Arts. David, I'm sure you're involved deeply in covering this. Your thoughts about what's happening over the next 48 hours for Donna Deegan and staff?
Yeah, it's a historic election, the first woman mayor in the city's history. That in itself is historic. As Randy talked about, she's really trying to get off on this right foot in terms of inclusivity, openness. There's so many different threads you can look at. I mean, one of the more interesting things is that this is the second member of the Hazouri family to be a mayor. Councilwoman DeFore served with Tommy Hazouri. Donna Deegan, the mayor-elect, is a second cousin of Tommy Hazouri. So it's kind of interesting that one family has produced two mayors. I find that pretty striking. They are not the same person. They'll govern in different ways. I think Tommy Hazouri liked to mix it up. He had some real famous blood feuds that lasted for years and years. One thing that's striking about the mayor-elect as she takes office is she's really, I think, kind of taken a position of, the campaign was a campaign. It's over. It's kind of a blank slate in terms of how she approaches some of the people who may have been rivals in the past, really trying to strike a bipartisan note. She's certainly done that in her appointment. So it's historic, I think, for that reason, too. Above all, that she's the first woman mayor elected to the city. But, also just kind of interesting. You got one family that's produced two mayors now.
And I want to talk about those appointments because there was a new roster yesterday that she announced. But Shelton, your thoughts as the journalist on also covering this as to this week and leading up to this week, and maybe we'll talk about what happens next week.
Yeah, well, it's a great thing. With politics, a lot of people have been turned off on politics the last 5-10 years or so, especially with this most recent campaign. Some of us in local media really tried to make it about the horse race, make it about the polls, make it about this toxic primary season, make it about interlopers from January 6th coming in and trying to amplify their voices. Donna managed to stay away from all the toxicity, and this what's happening this weekend is really kind of a celebration for the whole city, a city that especially younger people were not interested in politics and wanted nothing to do with this, but Donna managed to bring her back. And I think that, the inaugural festivities and the way she begins her term as mayor will really reflect the way that she's run the campaign and run her whole life, really.
It's interesting. Many of us at this table and many of us, many people we know, we've all known Donna in some shape or form for 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
We knew her as a reporter. We knew her in charge of a very successful cancer charity that really did some good and made a major impact and was visible a lot. And now I have to start thinking of her as Mayor Deegan and not
Yeah.
Donna, because I worked over at First Coast News on some stuff with her. I certainly have covered and talked to her on many of the 5Ks and things. Um, this is a mayor who's actually familiar with everybody. We know a version of Donna over the past 20, 30 years. So what are your thoughts about a mayor who's, at least right now, approachable and we have some idea who she is?
I y- I think what you're really saying is that everyone feels like they have a personal relationship with her. So that's why we all call her Donna. And I think she, knowing her, she probably has no problem with that, right? Instead of mayor, but she really represents, and I think her administration represents looking at bringing everybody in. So her administration will be an administration of an addition, not subtraction. I think we've come from an administration from subtraction. It was not inclusive. And I think it's just a breath of fresh air. I think it's a new day. And I, for one, am very excited about it.
For me, as a journalist for 40 years here, the last mayor I remember who I could almost comfortably call by a first name was John Delaney. But I'd known John Delaney as an assistant state attorney, as a state attorney, as a mayor, then to UNF, and now many other things. I actually saw Mayor Deegan 2 days ago, and I called her Mayor Deegan. I have to start thinking of her as our chief executive. And her husband was sitting right in here yesterday to talk about riptides, and I called him first husband, and he said, "No, I'm first dude."
Yep.
And he had on his dude shirt. So what about the rest of the gang? I mean, we have a familiar, quote unquote, friendly face as a mayor. We all know a majority of her staff picks. We've all worked with them as journalists. So on the right side of the table, just thoughts as to what we have coming up as far as staff and accessibility.
Well, I think it was Walt Whitman that said it best, I contain multitudes. And that's kind of the situation with Donna. We've watched her literally grow up from the 1980s. I've known her since I was probably 15 or something like that. And so as she rises, we can kind of see our own stories reflected in her, the ability to persevere through so much negativity. And, honestly, the last two mayors, Alvin Brown and Lenny Curry, within the first few weeks of them taking over, kind of kneecapped themselves with, negative interactions that they or their staff had with people at City Hall, with other city council people. And I think that the mayor, Donna Deegan, who in my phone, it's now just Donna in all caps. That's how we refer to her now. I think her first task as mayor is to try to sidestep a lot of this negativity and a lot of this quicksand that the alt-right's going to try and stick her in, whether it's stadium funding or budget issues or whatever. It's kind of, let's not put the cart before the horse.
So, AG, obviously, you're very involved in covering this. So your thoughts about the popularity of Donna, and maybe your thoughts about what happens in that first week or first month.
Well, it's been interesting, Dan, because she's made some bipartisan hires. A former council president, Anna Brochet, who's a Democrat now, is going to be CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Al Ferrero, who was Republican, Director of Neighborhoods. Scott Wilson will be Council Liaison. And, interesting enough, Garrett Dennis will be in the administration, Director of Boards and Commissions. I just published a story this morning about how they'll get around the lobbying ban. People from the legislative branch can't lobby, or they can't go to the executive branch and lobby city council for 2 years. So they're going to have to frame their interactions in certain ways, sort of like Lori Boyer did when she was at the Downtown Investment Authority. But, the good feeling, good vibes aside, I mean, Deegan is going to have some issues to deal with, and I don't think they're just constructions of the alt-right. I mean, the stadium deal is a big deal. The jail that Council President Ron Salem wants, that's also a big deal. There's lots of capital spend that's going to have to happen here. And, issues like Confederate monuments aren't going away. I talked to Nick Howland, the incoming finance chair, who will be taking a scalpel to the Deegan budget, and he promised they're going to look at it very closely, the entire budget. He was not specific, but you look at new positions like Parvez Ahmed, who's going to have the diversity and inclusion position. That's one that I think there might be some discussion on in August. So, yeah, the vibes are great. We all know Donna Deegan. She's a lovely person, et cetera. But the rubber's hitting the road now. She's going to be mayor. She's going to have to make tough decisions. And she's going to be dealing with supermajority Republican city council. So that's my take on it. She's going to have to hit the ground running quickly. She's going to have to, find a good stand on the stadium negotiations. And she's going to have to make sure that the current good position that the city budget is in is not compromised by the larger economy. Right now, we're in good shape financially. Millage collections are up compared to what they were expected. But as those of us who have been here a long time know, the local economy can turn very quickly. And when it does, it takes some time to recover, especially with millage collections, with office occupancy, things like that. So you've got to watch these sectors.
And that's correct. Obviously, a lot of the names you just named were announced last night in an email. Don't forget to give us a yell at 549-2937. That's 549-2937. Okay, we've got the new staff that she's hired, but what about the existing higher-up positions, gang? Does anybody who's been there for 4, 8, 12 years in higher-up positions, are we expecting some heads to roll in the next month or so as Donna moves down the line into the city departments?
Yeah, I don't. When we talked to her earlier in the week, she said she's going to obviously look at all the appointed positions. I think there's several hundred appointed positions that the mayor has. And traditionally, the mayor, when he or she takes office, will ask them all to submit a letter of resignation and then would review whether or not to accept that letter of resignation. The fire chief position might be one that's examined every time. Mayors often want to have their own fire chief. The current fire chief was a supporter of Daniel Davis. But when we asked her about it, she said again that she's not going to view anything through the prism of, well, you supported my opponent or you supported me in the campaign. She really says she's going to do it based on how well they're carrying out their duty. So I wouldn't say at this point there's going to be a big house cleaning or a big turnover. I think it'll be a gradual review. And I don't think it's going to be within the first 30 or 60 days. There's going to be an incredible number of turnover in those big positions. I think everybody will have a chance to make their case.
I'm Dan Scanlon. You're listening to First Coast Connect's Friday Media Roundtable. Let's just wrap this up. Any other thoughts about the next week or two or three from Shelton or our outgoing councilwoman?
I really believe that Mayor Deegan is much stronger than people realize, and they're going to underestimate her. So with the stadium and some of these other issues that have been brought up, I think you're going to be quite surprised how she handles those issues, and it's going to be in a good way.
Shelton, you're nodding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like Eleanor Roosevelt said, you never know how strong a woman is. Women are like tea bags. You don't know how strong they are till you put them in hot water. And there's plenty of hot water coming up. Speaking of which, between Donna as mayor and Tim Deegan still being on the air at First Coast News, this next hurricane season will be lit. It'll be the most entertaining hurricane season we've had since back when Jeb had that really good sign language interpreter that went viral briefly. It should be fun, but let's stay safe out there.
Hey, don't forget that when Donna had her election night party, it rained. Everybody had to hide inside, and she did make a quip about her husband, the meteorologist, and the rain. We talk about strong people, and many of us this week are mourning the loss of community activist Ben Frazier, who I've known for 8 years. He finally lost his battle on Saturday with cancer, and there was quite a moving ceremony on Tuesday night in James Weldon Johnson Park for him. many voices. In fact, I'm surprised they weren't heard inside the council chambers. Many chants, many memories. And I think the overwhelming thought there, as I covered it for WJCT, was that Ben may be gone, but his fight will move on. And that was something his daughter said and many others. So let's first of all mention that visitations for Ben are on Friday the 7th from 4:30 to 7 and Saturday from 9:30 until 10:55 a.m. Then the funeral service is Saturday at 11 a.m., all of that at the Bethel Church on Bethel Baptist Street. So that can be the final farewell. But any thoughts about the man who started as probably the one and only member of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville and has been a very well-known, sometimes controversial figure in this city since?
Yeah, I think anytime Ben Frazier was... Oh, go ahead, AG.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Ben, as his life went on, especially the last few years, I mean, he made global impact. I mean, he went to the United Nations, spoke to them about Florida's anti-riot law. He went to a Ron DeSantis press conference last year that he wasn't invited to, got arrested. He was arrested at the Jacksonville City Council for speaking his mind and protesting local politics and policies. The man spoke truth to power the whole time, and over the last few years of his life, I got to know him pretty well. I did some media appearances with him, including on the Black News Channel, which no longer exists. But, the reality is that Ben Frazier's impact on Jacksonville is going to be something that is going to be felt for years to come. And it is a blight on the local city council that, they pushed him to the side so many times when he'd come and speak about issues regarding the North Side, regarding equity in general. And I'm interested to see how this upcoming city council and Mayor Deegan actually recognizes the impact. He obviously backed Deegan during the campaign. That was an endorsement that she treasured. People on the right tried to message against that endorsement. It didn't matter. And Ben Frazier's legacy, I think, is going to be informative over the next few years in Jacksonville as we figure out our new path forward.
Well, that's right. Donna, in fact, did speak at the memorial on Tuesday night, and her comment was there was no voice more melodious when he wanted to be and no voice that spoke with more power. David?
Yeah, I think to AG's point, one thing I think will be interesting to see is when I think of the Northside Coalition, it is so much hand in glove with Ben Frazier. You think of the Northside Coalition, you think of Ben Frazier, you think of Ben Frazier, you think of the Northside Coalition. It's something he founded, built. He was a spokesman for it. Very media savvy person. He was the one who led the group in chants. He was the one who was getting arrested. It'd be interesting to see whether what he built is something that has organizationally longevity. If it moves on, it has the same kind of high profile nature that it had while he was alive and running it. Certainly at the event you talked about, Dan, there were many people who said the spirit of Ben Frazier will live on. Organizationally, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see who's going to replace him, who's going to be the next person who does it. Are their strategy and tactics going to be the same? I think Ben Frazier brought issues to light, but sometimes he antagonized people who may have been his allies. So it'll be interesting to see what the strategy is going forward by that group.
I was there both times he was arrested. I was covering the governor at that event, and then I was in the front row, literally, and Randy was probably just a few scant feet away at City Council when he really wanted to make his point known about the monuments and would not give up the microphone when there was less than 2 minutes offered to each of the many speakers that night. And then passive resistance, typical 1960s, he went down on the ground right in front of me as I'm shooting video. And I'll give the officers credit. They tried for about 2 minutes. Please, Mr. Frazier, please, let's go. And they were fairly gentle with him, considering that was not the case during the governor's incident. And his last word literally was, "Am I under arrest?" as he goes out the door. And then Will Brown shot an epic photo of him in the back of the police car outside City Hall, looking very pensive and thoughtful. But in both cases, charges dropped. Randy, obviously you were there for that.
I was. That was not our finest hour, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I wish that had ended up very differently. I don't know why they couldn't have just escorted him out and that'd be the end of it. I think he wanted to be arrested. I think that was part of his point, obviously. But I think Ben Frazier was a very complicated man. One-on-one, he was charming, incredibly intelligent. He, as everyone knows, knew how to use the media, knew how to get a group of people, roused and angry on an issue. And I had a lot of respect for him. But I agree with David. I'm not sure that organization. It'll be interesting to see if that organization will continue without him. I mean, just his voice alone, just the baritone. I mean, was so commanding.
Well, he's an old broadcaster, and those of us who do this for a living, sometimes there is a persona that comes out when the microphone's there, and I would talk to him about fishing. I would talk to him about family, and he was just this gentle-voiced person.
Right.
He would show up at crime scenes that I'd be covering for the Times-Union and ask questions. He wanted to be involved. He was an accredited journalist, too, which is, I think, something that was maybe not known. He still was a journalist. He still wrote many things, and every day he would send a Facebook post.
I just wanted to add there is a resolution that has been filed in council by Council Member Gaffney Jr. So this council will acknowledge him and honor him, which is great.
Shelton, what do you think? I mean, you probably knew him as well as anybody.
Yeah, the Ben Fraser I first met 30 years ago is not the same Ben Fraser that I got to know in later years, and it was not the same Ben Fraser that my family knew back in the 1980s. The Northside Coalition, he founded it in 2015 because of an incident at a convenience store, and it's worth remembering that everything he accomplished, it all happened in 7 years. He got the Confederate statue taken down in Jamesville and Johnson Park, got the park renamed, all those schools that had their names changed, a lot of that had to do with him, and he would have never stopped. The last couple of years when those arrests were going on, he knew he was running out of time, and he said to me at one point, if his story had ended on the floor that day, he would have been fine with that, because the fact is that by all rights, Ben Fraser should have never lived to see the 21st century at all. He'd been through things. He'd been through, addiction, jail. He'd messed up his family once. He fought these last few years like a man that was given a second chance, and he was determined to leave it all on the field. And it was a perfect combination of the man and the moment, because he comes along, and then the George Floyd protests and the pandemic and all circumstances combined to create the situation in which he could shine. As far as what the Northside Coalition does in the future, it's unclear. You can't ever really replace a guy like that. But what he did, he helped train and mentor a lot of young activists, whether it's Tango Jordan, Maceo George, Angie Nixon, myself, countless other people. So I think the Ben Fraser way of doing social protest, we probably won't see anymore. I think it is, unless something unprecedentedly awful happens, I don't think we will ever see large-scale social protests in this country like we did in 2020. I think that era is pretty much over. But what we're going to see is a new style of activism, especially coming into this 2024 election, and like you said, we'll continue to feel his impact for many years to come.
Well, I'll never forget that he always made sure that he would stand up out of that electric wheelchair, that he was standing when he spoke.
That's right.
And I know it was tough for him.
Mm-hmm.
I know it hurt him. And because you could visibly see he was getting worse and worse on his feet. But yet when he got the award a few weeks ago, he was standing proud for that.
Yeah, I think what Shelton said, the man in the moment, great way to put it, Shelton, and somebody who was ready to have a second act. And I think that's one of the inspiring parts of his story is that he did have a true second act.
He won.
It was one of redemption and one of conviction. And I think regardless of whether you disagreed or agreed with the positions he took, that was a really inspirational thing that he did.
Well, let's move on here. We've been talking about the new mayor, but obviously there's other changes that have occurred. Incoming Jacksonville City Council President Ron Salem has selected his committees. So what's going to happen? Who's going to do what and where? And again, as we've already touched upon, will that Republican-heavy body work well with the Democratic mayor? So who wants to take first stab at the committee chairs and what's happening? Shelton?
I'll go ahead since I wrote about it.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, the thing you got to watch in these committees, there's two that really matter to people, is finance and rules. And Finance, the 5-2 Republican supermajority. Reggie Gaffney Jr. and Jacoby Pittman, who, of course, was appointed to the council originally by Rick Scott, are on that committee. And what I'm watching, what I'm watching with them is, how they handle the budget, how they handle the hearings over the August budget deliberations. It's going to be something where Randy White, where Nick Howland basically lead the show, Kevin Carrico, who's also there. Rules Committee is also interesting. It's another Republican supermajority. And that's where we've got a number of new members of the City Council on the Rules Committee, which kind of makes me wonder, how they're going to know council rules if they just got on the council. So those two committees are big. Jacoby Pittman, she chairs one committee, but the other four is going to be Democratic chairs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right. The question's up for grabs here with the panel in studio. Shelton?
Okay. I think, it is a Republican supermajority on the council now, but it kind of raises the question, are they Trump Republicans? Are they DeSantis Republicans? Are they Lenny Curry Republicans? It is a Republican supermajority, but I see it more as a bunch of Republicans that are not on the same page, that are basically, I think that the committees will go as it goes, but the idea of them, it remains to be seen which ones are going to start posturing, maybe not this budget, but the next ones, which ones start posturing to maybe run against Donna in 2024. My money's on Molly Curry, but we'll see about that. I think that as it goes right now, I don't know how much Dean Black is going to affect things. It's possible that one of these Republicans on the council will just decide to grandstand and maybe obstruct and throw some things up. But I expect this first budget to be fairly mellow. I don't see a lot of controversy coming out of it. Not this first year. Next year will be a definite train wreck.
Let's ask someone who knows.
Yeah.
Randy?
I think that Finance Committee is a tough committee when you look at the lineup. I think, the only thing that gives me some comfort is that Mike Weinstein is a part of this in terms of the budget. But I think this is where they're going to throw down the gauntlet. I think this is when you're going to see how much difficult time they're going to give this mayor. Nick, and I would say who's controlling these people? It's not Dean Blacks of the world necessarily. It's their political consultant. Who's behind a lot of these? A lot of people in finance is the same people that were behind Lenny Curry, and that is concerning.
Okay, and David Barline, obviously, the Times-Union, you've been covering a lot of this, so I really want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, this idea that there's going to be a, quote, resistance in the first year, I don't think that'll happen because I think there is a honeymoon period. I agree with Councilwoman DeFore that Mayor-elect Deegan is going to be not a pushover. I do think that there's a Republican supermajority, but at least one member of that supermajority is Matt Carlucci, who endorsed her. So I think Deegan's message will be, let's set aside party labels and do what's for the greater good of the city. One of the first tests to me is going to be, does this Republican-controlled city council go and say, we're going to cut the millage rate, the property tax rate, and because I think Deegan will propose a budget that does not. That would be a big issue. Some of the other stuff like, we're not sure if you should have this office or that office. I mean, she won. That's the deference you give the mayor, and the mayor should be able to create her own office and her own team. And if that's the fight that the council's going to pick, I'm not sure that's the best fight for them to pick coming right out of the gate.
Shelton?
Oh, I pretty much agree with that. I mean, it's it's unclear. I mean, of course, we have to allow for the fact that things are going to happen between now and then that we can't foresee. There may be people out there now that will not be around in a few months. That remains to be seen one way or another. And we don't know what will happen, but I trust the new mayor with the chaos yet to come. She's weathered so many storms already. Low climate change is no big deal.
It's interesting you bring up storms because here we are in what started out as an active hurricane season. Those storms that have gotten to us, like Irma, have caused some damage, and that could be the first major task of the new mayor to handle, and a new EOC chief who is a talented former police executive. What happens if we get a big storm and this is a brand new, quote unquote, untested administration?
Well, I think
Well, we know DeSantis is traveling around the country, so he's not going to be much help with this. And I'm curious to see writ large how the new administration interfaces with the governor's office and with Tallahassee in general. But yeah, I mean, if we get a storm and it's something like an Irma impact, Jacksonville is not in a great position to handle that. In the state of Florida, with the governor running for president, he's speaking in Philadelphia right now, is likewise going to be caught flat-footed. So yeah, this is a potentially perilous storm season.
Hey, listeners, give us a yell, 549-2937. You're listening to First Coast Connect's Media Roundtable. Interesting conversation in our WJCT newsroom yesterday. You've got a father and son on council. When you hold your Sunday dinner, do you have to notice it?
Right.
Sunshine Law?
I don't think they have to notice that, but it was interesting that they had a publicly noticed meeting for Matt Carlucci to talk with his son, Joe Carlucci, about legislative priorities for Joe Carlucci. And as part of, Matt Carlucci, the elder, is doing all these meetings with all these city council members. And it is just interesting. I saw them together at one meeting, kind of in profile. And, I can see the resemblance. And, it's an interesting thing. You have a father and son serving together on the council. That's never happened before in city history.
Didn't Carlucci's dad serve too?
Joe was
Yes.
a state senator. I don't remember. I think he was a lawmaker, and he was a tough
And Joe
guy.
Carlucci
I
served
remember
on
him
the
well.
first city council, so you have 3 generations of Carlucci. So that's an interesting angle. And the Gaffney family, you've had, I think, 3 or 4 Gaffney brothers, and now that's passed the torch to the next generation. Deegan, the Hazuri family. I guess maybe that's a sign of maturity of the consolidated government. Now they're getting family generations.
We need some new Holzendorfs coming up.
Well, that's true. There was a husband and wife there, and Betty was right hand to the mayor for a while there, and she was, I think, running the city at some point. Senator Joe Carlucci back in the 80s was a very tough guy, and he did not see eye to eye with the then Sheriff Del Carson. And I think it's interesting when I broke the story that unfortunately Joe Sr. passed away, I got an interview with Sheriff Carson. Shows the caliber of the man who respected the old bull who was up there in the State House. And maybe we don't see that anymore. Any wrap-up thoughts before we go to the next big piece of news?
I just want to say, you mentioned earlier that some of the old Curry holdovers were talking about what they might do after in the new administration. I want to let them know, if any of them are listening, that they're hiring for Jacksonville ambassadors right now. So if you like riding around the little Segway scooter with the orange shirt, you guys definitely, I'm sure you're experienced.
Okay. Now, there is one more big thing happening this week that has come back to the forefront. As we all know, Diana Green has left the Duval County School District as superintendent, and the school board has begun its search for a new superintendent. But yet the head of the Jacksonville NAACP this week said, we think, unfortunately, that someone's already been picked. And that already been picked is a former principal who just left another school district, saying he had a possibility to go back to Northeast Florida and hang out with his family. So Isaiah Rumlin's comments in a letter Wednesday to the school board chair, Kelly Coker, said that the search is squandering valuable resources and taxpayer dollars since they already apparently have someone in mind. So let's throw that one out. Is there an honest-to-goodness search going on, or do you think an offer's been made?
It's funny because when they were getting ready to run Green out, I talked to a number of people on the school board, and they said that they wanted a change maker, somebody from the outside, somebody who wasn't tied to Duval County institutionally. And if Addison Davis is the pick, as is expected, and indeed was rumored at the time by people who weren't those sources, then these conservative members of the school board kind of have a vague on their face, because Addison Davis, he was a holdover from the Nikolai Vitti years. He knows the district, but at the same time, he knows the district, which means he's going to be kind of tethered to sort of the institutional knowledge and biases that the district has already. So deciding you're going to get some reformer coming in, you're not getting that with Addison Davis. What you're basically getting is a return to the status quo. And if you look at school board district politics over the decades, It's always been outsider, insider, outsider, insider. Green was the outsider. We're back to the insider. And the NAACP is right to say that this is a pre-cooked search because Addison Davis is about the least imaginative and most predictable pick they could have had.
I know many retired teachers who have mixed opinions about Addison Davis. They remember him as an administrator and a principal, and there were some novel things that were done when he was a school district administrator. So, any thoughts, Councilwoman?
Wasn't he also, was he superintendent in Clay County as well? I think
Yes.
he was.
Yes.
And so not only Hillsborough County, I think they're looking for a known entity and someone they trust. Whether it's a right choice or not, I don't know. But I think AG made a great point that there is a history of going outside, inside, and I think this is one that it would not surprise me if he has already been chosen.
But yet we have a school board that says they are doing a search, that they are working on it, that they're hiring an outside firm to be involved in the search. And so Isaiah Rumlin, NAACP, his comments seem to indicate that that's not happening, or maybe it's just a shell.
Well, I think I don't know enough really, and AG made some great points to really say that the fix is in. I think the bigger concern you would have is that if there is this even perception that somebody's already got the inside track, you might have qualified candidates who say, what's the point of going through this process, publicizing my name, letting my current employer know that I'm interested in a different position, so it could kind of freeze the field. Addison Davis was an administrator in Duval County. I have no idea what he knew or should have known or could have known about all the scandals that came out of the high school, the Douglas Anderson School of Performing Arts, and that really was a big reason that Diana Green had to leave and retired early. So I don't know what there is in that background. He was a superintendent in Clay County where he had to run for election, so he knows politics. They did approve a half-cent sales tax there, so he's got experience there. He's obviously knows state law and how a big school district like Hillsborough County operates. So he's got a lot on paper that looks like it could be good, but, they are going through a surge, and, I sort of take them at face value. They're going to get some candidates, and, hopefully they'll get a lot of candidates, and they'll have a big selection to choose from.
So, AG, what do you think? Will we have a list of possibles winnowed down by the school district that could possibly bring out a gem of a choice?
I think we could have a list. I think it's kind of a pro forma list. I think of the JEA CEO search that saw Aaron Zahn picked because of his passion for the job. Whenever you hear words like passion or local connection, grab your wallet because that means the fix is in. And during that JEA CEO search, we saw more qualified outside candidates. Chris Euster out of Texas basically get disrespected by the current JEA board at the time, for one thing or another. And I think that could be in play here. So candidates who are not Addison Davis, who have to give notice to their school districts, they may be given pause. And there are so many superintendent openings right now in Florida because of the wacky politics out of Tallahassee in the last couple of years regarding DeSantis and the Board of Education and changes they've made to education in the state, that there's actually a shortage of qualified candidates. So a lot of districts are going through this right now. That may be another factor mitigating in Addison Davis' favor.
Well, let's get down to nuts and bolts here. The school district, like the city, has a lot of infrastructure needs. They just got that sales tax money, and they're starting to build schools. But there's still got to be somebody in charge to direct the fine-tuning of those new properties. And I'm sure there's other things that have to get built. So that new superintendent is going to have a lot of infrastructure, nuts and bolts, broken sidewalk to deal with.
And let's be clear about this. Whether it's Addison Davis or whoever they pick to be the next superintendent, they're going to be here 2 or 3 years, and they're going to get bounced out on controversy. It's the average citizen in this city, doesn't really pay attention to this after all these years of seeing teachers, the teachers union, parents, students being pushed around and bullied, whether it's on school violence or the books in schools or the COVID situation. No one really has well, I won't say no one. I'll say me. I have no faith in the school board's ability to pick a good superintendent. I don't have any faith in the school board to pick anyone that isn't going to be terrible. I don't trust their judgment at all, but we'll see what happens. We know how the NAACP feels about this, but the real question is, how do the Moms for Liberty feel? Because they're the real kingmakers in all this.
And, you know, I've been here 40 years plus covering the news, and I have lost track of how many school superintendents we have had.
I'm a Herb Sang guy.
I start back to Herb Sang, and I knew him well. I can think of a few others that I didn't know well, who were very distant, but I've lost track of those people. Some I knew very well. Some you could talk to. I only met Dr. Green on a tragic night at Rains High School. It's the only time I've ever talked to her. I got a good sense of her way back then. And I think that good sense held for all the years I've covered the school district. But
we would do a better job using AI to pick the superintendent than relying on the school board.
But you need somebody who you get a good feel off of, like a Donna.
Yeah.
You get a good feel off of. Now, that's initial. Let's see what happens in a year. But the superintendent, we're dealing with our kids. And in my case, my grandson going to school. So I want to see, I think, as others, someone who is a school person. Thoughts as we wrap this up?
How about if whoever wins Teacher of the Year in Duval County this year gets to be the next superintendent? Maybe try that for a few cycles instead of this current process. Because the same people who are picking this new person, they're the same ones more or less that picked Diana Green, and by all accounts that was a failure. So the people that voted for Green, are they going to recuse themselves for the next process?
Well, we'll have to wrap it up on this
Diana
point.
Green a failure? I don't see that Diana Green was a failure at all.
I
Her
agree with
time
that.
ran out, but she wasn't a failure.
She accomplished a lot in a very short period of time.
Yes.
Diana Green was not a failure.
Yes, and like I said, I got a good feel off her on that literally her first month. She has to deal with the tragedy of a Rains High School shooting. But we have to wrap this up. We'll all be discussing this again, I'm sure. But now it is time for our lightning round. My lightning round edition is that yesterday, unexpectedly, the administrator of the St. Johns County government quit. The same day there was supposed to be a public meeting with the commissioners about his salary, and there's lots of rumors surrounding why he left. Officially, his two sub-administrators will handle things until the commission figures out what's next. Gang?
I heard he was pushed out.
I'm again, those are rumors, and I'm a journalist.
Okay. The lightning round?
The lightning round.
All right. Well, it's July 4th, so come out to RAM, that's Riverside Arts Market on Tuesday. There's going to be a smaller market than normal than they have on Saturdays, but come on out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hopefully some good food trucks, too.
Absolutely.
So JEA is doing a study of whether it might make sense, among other options, for JEA to become the utility provider for water and sewer service in Atlantic Beach. It's a long way to go in the study, and a lot of options are under consideration. It's striking that 4 years ago we were talking about whether JEA was going to be purchased by a for-profit investor-owned utility, and now JEA is looking at expanding possibly the public model of utility ownership.
AG, I know you've got something big for lightning round.
Yeah, I sure do. Tomorrow I'll be on First Coast News with Andrew Pentazzi of the Tributary. We're going to be talking about Donna Deegan's inauguration. We'll be providing a color commentary. I'll also be on next Sundays, This Week in Jacksonville, Kent Justice. So if you want to see me on TV, you got two shots.
Okay, and Shelton, obviously.
Oh, well, I cannot remember the guy's name, but there's a local fighter who fought for the UFC. He made his UFC debut a couple of weeks ago, and he accidentally thumbed a guy in the eye, so that match got thrown out. I predict that by the next time UFC comes to Jacksonville, which will be sometime next year, that guy will be wearing championship gold.
Okay. Don't forget, we've got the Florida Roundup at noon. We'll take a closer look at a number of laws that take effect Saturday and what they mean to you, the Florida citizen. On this week's What's Health Got to Do with It, we'll explore the latest healthcare headlines with our medical roundtable panelists. That's tomorrow afternoon at 4 and Sunday night at 9. And I want to say thanks to our panel for another exciting Friday. Up next, it's the 4th of July weekend, so some culinary suggestions for your Independence Day feed fest, and we'll be right back.
This week on Science Friday, we're celebrating Pride Month by appreciating the diversity of sex and sexuality in nature.
There's a fungus considered a queer icon within mycology, which is a mushroom that has as many as maybe 23,000 different sexes or mating types.
That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
First, there were reports, then transcripts, and now audio.
This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information.
Donald Trump claims it was all bravado. But how does this leaked tape add to the former president's legal woes? A big week for the Supreme Court. Canada's wildfire smoke makes an unwelcome return. So does malaria. Much more on the Roundup. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Hey, welcome back. While we're fortunate enough to be able to cook outdoors year-round, because we are in Florida after all, many of us celebrate the 4th of July by firing up that grill and hosting an al-fresco feast. So at least we have some really delicious recommendations now for your Independence Day gathering, whether you use charcoal or gas. So let's say hi to Lauren Titus. And Lauren, first of all, what's your street cred? What's your title here? Because I know you're a darn good cook.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I love being in the kitchen, and I love cooking outdoors. And even though we're fortunate enough to be able to cook outdoors year-round, 4th of July holds special occasions for a lot of us to have barbecues and family gatherings. And there's a lot of ways to make it a lot easier on you, especially given how hot it is. Certainly this 4th of July, so that you can spend minimal time at the hot grill and maximize your time partying with your friends and family.
Well, Lauren.
For instance, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was going to say one way to get a jump start on grilling is to skewer everything. You can get your skewers ready ahead of time. You can do chicken, meat, vegetables. You can even do dessert on skewers and have them all assembled and ready to fire up when folks are there and ready to eat. And a lot of things like chicken, you can marinate the day before, have it ready, soak your bamboo skewers if you use bamboo, or if you have metal skewers, get them all assembled. And you can even, if you want to have guests help out, have them help put together the skewers, and that way they can even customize what they want to eat on the skewers.
All right, my dad was a head chef back in New York, and he always told me never use gas. Gas flavors food. I had a gas grill for years, but I got that old Walmart special charcoal grill now at home, and that's what I'm now cooking on. And I have to say, everything I cook on it tastes so much better. But what's your opinion, first of all, gas versus charcoal? And then what's your opinion of self-igniting briquettes, or just get some charcoal and work on it?
Well, cooking is very subjective, and I really wouldn't want to discourage anyone from cooking on gas grills. They're very convenient, and if it helps more people cook their own food, then I'm all for it. It's become very popular to use flavored briquettes, or smoking is another popular way of cooking outdoors, with different types of wood to create, to enhance the flavor of things. Oak or apple wood, or different types of cherry wood, for instance. So really, it's what you're most comfortable with. A lot of people feel like a gas grill they have more control over, so they feel more comfortable cooking with gas. But personally, I use a charcoal, really simple charcoal grill that I can fire up pretty easily and cook. I cook whole fish on it, chicken, do a lot of vegetable things, tempeh and tofu. So it's really a personal preference. I just say just get out there and cook, whichever one you're most comfortable with.
Well, you talk about flavored briquettes. I had great success a few weeks ago with one of the little tins of mesquite. I just zipped off the top, put it on top of the coals, and I was able to smoke a most amazing steak. Was really proud of myself. And that's easy to put in. You don't have to soak the wood, wrap it in foil, and put it on there. Your thoughts about getting the smoke pieces?
There's a lot of people who like playing with that. And in fact, I've seen a lot of barbecue masters who have gone from smoking in their backyards to running businesses. So I'm all for it, especially if it enhances your culinary adventures. I did want to mention about cooking steaks on the grill. Some people feel that you really should only flip the steak once, but according to a lot of my chef friends, it's better to flip your steaks more frequently to get more of an even cooking throughout the steak. So don't be afraid to turn the steak 3 or 4 times to get the nice grill marks, but also evenly cooked throughout the steak to the degree that you want it.
Now, we all know steak, chicken, shrimp, pizza on the Barbie. I would be scared stiff to do that I'd end up with a charcoal cinder. So you tell me, how do you make a pizza on a grill?
It is actually very easy. The trick to it is really keeping your eyes on it, because it goes really fast. And what you do is, of course, you make your dough up ahead of time. You have it all ready, portioned out. You have all of your toppings, cheese, veggies, sausage, whatever. And then you get your grill to a medium temperature and spread the dough out in the size you want. I recommend like an individual size pizza, because it's easier to keep an eye on and to have it cook evenly. It takes about 3 minutes on that first side. You cook the first side, you flip it over, and that's when you put your toppings on, and then you cook the bottom of it, and you could put the lid down to let the cheese melt a little bit. The vegetables, if you want to grill them ahead of time or have them raw to put on the pizza. But it's really a matter of, because it does cook fast, it's a matter of keeping your eyes on the pizza dough, the crust, so that it doesn't burn to charcoal, but it gets a nice crispy grill flavor to it.
Well, it's going to be a great holiday weekend. I'm going to be grilling out, and don't forget that you also, if you got a fire pit, you could probably do some shish kebab or something on top of that. That was Lauren Titus, an excellent chef, and some great ideas there. And as we wrap up this day, that's our program. Thanks to all of our guests and callers. And I really want to thank the folks behind the glass who make this so easy to do this program. Our executive producer is David Luckin. Our senior producer is Heather Schatz. Our director is Isabella De Silva, with technical help from Morning Edition host Michelle Corum. I thank them for making this job easy. Have questions or comments about First Coast Connect? Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I'm Dan Scanlon. You're listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Remember, due to the Independence Day holiday, we'll be back next Wednesday. But if you missed anything, you can catch the rebroadcast at 8 p.m. today or find today's show on WJCT.org or on your favorite podcast platform. Have a great and safe 4th of July weekend.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.